think we are now ready to get started. So moving on to the next slide. My name is Joanna and I'm the Outreach and Communications Coordinator at RethinkWaste. I am joined by my colleagues Laura, an Environmental Education Fellow, and Juan, a Public Spaces Fellow, and Julia, the Outreach and Communications Manager. RethinkWaste is a government agency that handles all of the waste services from all of the cities and towns between Burlingame to East Palo Alto. RethinkWaste also owns the Shoreway Environmental Center in San Carlos, which is where all of the waste goes and gets handled before it goes to its next destination. Recology is our contracting partner and is the one who picks up all the waste and brings it to the Shoreway Environmental Center. I'm also joined today by Michelle and Heather, who are both Waste Zero specialists at Recology. Today we'll be talking about the other R's: refuse, reduce, reuse, and repair. We'll have a review about proper sorting, and we'll provide tips on how to talk about waste reduction with your household or your family and friends. All right, let's get into it. So to get us started, we want to first show the Waste Zero hierarchy. I'm sure you've all heard of the 4 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, which means composting. But did you know that this is actually a hierarchy, which means it's arranged in this order on purpose and ranked by importance. There are also more R's than just reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. As you can see in this graphic, there's also refuse at the top and also repair. And the reason refuse, reduce, reuse, and repair are higher up in the hierarchy is because they have a higher impact in reducing your waste than recycling and composting. Recycling and composting are one solution, but they are not the solution. They are a part of a much larger picture, and incorporating the other R's into your life ensures you'll reduce a lot of waste in your life and also makes you a good steward for the environment. So next, Laura will give us a deep dive into what the other R's entail and tips on how to use them in our everyday lives.
Thanks, Joanna. The first R we'll be talking about is refuse. By following this Waste Zero hierarchy, you're refusing the norm. The society that we live in has certain expectations of us, and part of that is our purchasing habits. We've been told to buy, 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 and it may be good for the economy, but it's not a sustainable solution. We can each do our part by shopping smart. Part of the reason we need to start making smart purchases is because of planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is when companies implement strategies to get customers to purchase a new version of their product by making the older version non-functional. Have you ever updated an old phone or computer and found that your device is less effective? Well, you may have experienced planned obsolescence. One strategy to get customers to buy new is to provide updates that don't work well with older hardware. We can work against planned obsolescence by doing our research and refusing to buy unreliable products. We can also work to repair products that break. Lastly, there are hidden costs in most products. Some of those hidden costs are environmental costs. Since we have yet to develop a widespread system that includes environmental costs into the price of a product, it can be difficult to tell what products are actually good for the environment. Until we learn to include these environmental costs, we can each do our research and learn more about environmental practices of companies. As we all work to implement this hierarchy into our lives, keep in mind that you're going against the norm and it's an active process. It's okay if you make a few mistakes along the way. We can all work together to reduce our impact on the environment by using the other R's, doing our research, and empowering ourselves. Next slide, please. Awesome. We want to empower ourselves to say no thank you to things we don't need, such as giveaway items like cheap pens, as well as utensils, condiments, and bags. Next time you're at a street fair or maybe a conference, be mindful of the free giveaways and ask yourself if you really need them or will use them. If the answer is no, then just say no. The same thing goes for plastic utensils, condiments, and bags, particularly when we're getting to-go food. We can simply say no thank you and use our own. By saying no, you're not only preventing future waste, but you're also preventing future resources from being used. Through supply and demand, as more and more people say no to items they don't need, companies will choose to make less of those items and use less resources in the process. Today, we have more of a selection than ever before, and every dollar we spend is a vote cast for a company and a product. We want to make sure we're doing our research to find out what companies we are supporting. We all have the power to refuse items we don't need and the power to refuse companies we don't want to support. Next slide, please. Thank you. In addition to doing a little bit of research, be sure to shop smart by questioning yourself and your purchases. Before you buy something, particularly large purchases, ask yourself, do I already have this or something similar? Do I really need this? Will I use this? Will I use it more than once? Could I borrow it instead, or could I rent it if I only need it for a little while? By asking yourself these questions, you can stop yourself from wasting money and resources on something you don't need and won't use. A pro tip is to make a list or a plan, even if it's just in your head. By making a plan before you go shopping, you can prevent yourself from purchasing things you don't need. We can all prevent waste by thinking before we buy. Next slide, please. Once you've made your list or plan, it's off to the store. As a consumer, you can empower yourself to reduce waste even when you're purchasing items. One good way to start reducing waste is to focus on packaging. It's everywhere, and it may be a natural starting place. There are lots of steps you can take to reduce your packaging. Here are some options. Buy products with the least amount of packaging in the first place. Buy local and use collective shipping. When it comes to packaging, truly less is more. One way to avoid excess packaging is to avoid those plastic produce bags. Instead, just take the produce. If you want to try and avoid packaging altogether, you can head to a zero waste store, a local farmer's market, or look into CSA options where food comes straight to your home from a local farm. Another way to reduce, if you like to shop online, is to try collective shipping, which is where you purchase items with a group of people, such as friends or neighbors, and get the items shipped all together, thus reducing the packaging. Or you could start by finding out what common items you're throwing in the garbage already, by conducting a home waste audit. The audit can give you more ideas for what items you could prevent from going into the landfill every day. If you need to buy something, buy high quality. After you've decided that you both need and will use the product, buying a high quality version will prevent future waste. For example, you've decided you need and will use headphones. By buying high quality headphones rather than several pairs of cheap headphones over the course of a few years, you prevent the waste and save the resources from those cheap headphones. We can start small, but make a big impact if we work to reduce. Next slide, please. Another great way to reduce your impact on the planet with your purchases is to safely shop secondhand. Although many people donate used goods, not nearly as many purchase secondhand items, which can leave a lot of reusable items destined for the landfill. By shopping secondhand, you can give old items a new and useful life. Another way to prevent landfill waste is to replace disposable items with reusables. By making reusables easily accessible, you can prevent tons of waste. You can start by making your own reuse kit, which you can see on the slide. Your reuse kit may look a little different than this one. The key is to think about what disposable items you typically use and what reusable items you could replace them with. After you've made your kit, be sure to carry it with you or keep it in your car or backpack, somewhere easily accessible, because you never know when you're going to need it. For example, if you like to get boba, like I do, you can carry around a metal straw and a reusable cup with you. Lastly, try your hand at creative reuse. Just as many of us take old cans and jars and find new uses for them, challenge yourself to find a new use for old items. For example, got a stack of old t-shirts? Try turning them into a beautiful quilt, or you can cut them up into rags. There are lots of different creative reuse options out there. Go ahead and search online to see what projects there are. There are many ways to incorporate reuse into your life, and they all help the environment. Next slide. We would also like to challenge you to try your hand at repair. For many people, repair can seem overwhelming. As someone that's not very handy, I can relate. However, repairing can be very beneficial. Not only will you be preventing items from going to the landfill, but you'll also gain a sense of accomplishment. Let's break down some of the barriers to repair. Firstly, repair can be a little anxiety-inducing. When you're feeling overwhelmed, remember, the item is already broken, so why not try and fix it? Another way to gain confidence in your repairing skills is to start small. Start with something relatively easy, like sewing up a hole or putting on a button. Then work your way up to more complicated repairs. Another barrier is a lack of knowledge. When you feel like you don't even know where to start, try the internet. There are tons of guides and videos that can lead you to repair all of your broken items. If you're lacking tools, you can try your local library. There are 2 toolkits available for checkout through the San Mateo County Library System. And our last barrier is a lack of parts. Many parts can be found online, and you can help make parts, tools, and guides more available by supporting right to repair legislation. Next slide. Thank you. If you need a little push to try repairing, or you're interested in learning more about repair, check out a virtual Fix-It clinic. The next one takes place on July 12th from 12 to 3. We will be sending out a link with more information after the webinar. The leader of our local Fix-It clinics, Peter Mooey, sorry about that, Peter, might be on this call. So if you're here, go ahead and post in the chat. We are all capable of repairing, and repair is a great option for keeping items functional and saving resources from being landfilled. Now, Joanna will be showing you some of the items she uses in her everyday life to help reduce her impact on the planet.
Thank you, Laura. I'll quickly go over items that I use that help me to reduce my own waste. So first, I'm going to go over, I wanted to show produce bags. So Laura mentioned reducing plastic produce bags. It's an easy way to eliminate those pesky plastic produce bags by getting cloth ones. I have a cloth one and a mesh one here, and I can throw them in the laundry to keep them clean. This allows me to choose loose produce while avoiding produce wrapped in all kinds of plastic, and I can avoid the plastic bags. Second, I have black plastic. This looks familiar to you all. So right now, a lot of us might be doing a lot of ordering for takeout, so it's difficult to avoid some plastic in that sense. I end up with these containers made of black plastic, and we don't take black plastic in our recycling facility because it is low quality plastic, which means it doesn't have a market for us to sell to. And on top of that, our machines aren't able to identify it. So I reuse these containers, sometimes for leftovers, sometimes if I'm cooking or baking and I want to give it to my family, I use these containers. We have an unspoken trade agreement between us about these containers. And you can reuse these for many things. I've seen it hold pens, little ketchup and soy sauce packets that we end up with. The list goes on. Next thing I'm going to show you is my utensils kit. So these have saved me from so many of those little single-use plastic utensils. It comes with a spoon, a fork, some chopsticks, a knife, and it has given me the choice to always say no thank you to plastic utensils, which are not recyclable, and they get stuck in the machines at our recycling facility. So I keep this in my purse so it's easy to grab, and I have it on me at all times. And really, I'd rather just use my own. Next, I'm gonna show you our jars. So jars are my favorite things to reuse. I use them as containers to hold bulk pasta, rice, garlic. This particular one was gifted to me specifically for boba drinks, which was great. I'd be able to say no to the plastic cup and use my own instead, but it's very versatile and can be used for so much more. And I made chia seed pudding, and it's in one of my favorite jars. Yes, one can have a favorite jar. And this one was once a salsa jar. So today it holds my chia seed pudding, but who knows what it'll be tomorrow. The possibilities are endless. Lastly, similar to the shirt quilt that Laura mentioned, I have this dress that is made up of shirts. I could not let go of some of these shirts because they were given to me by someone special. Thanks, Mom. But I can't fit them anymore, so I worked with an upcycling artist that I would see at fairs in San Francisco named Elle Raleigh, and she recreated this piece with shirts that I already had. So I encourage you all to look at what you already have and rethink how it can be used. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle to review proper sorting and how to talk about waste reduction.
Great, thanks, Joanna. So we're going to begin our sorting review once we get these slides back up. Okay, so the fourth R in the hierarchy is recycling. The first category of materials accepted in the recycling is clean cardboard and paper. Make sure these items are broken down before placing them in your recycling cart. Next is rigid plastics, number 1 through 7. The only exception to this is black plastic, which we'll go into further detail later, and Joanna also touched on. The next category is tin and aluminum cans, clean aluminum foil, and foil trays. Finally, the last category is glass bottles and jars of any color. Make sure bottles, cans, and jars are clean before placing them in the recycling. This will keep the cardboard and paper in your recycling clean. Glass and metal are infinitely recyclable, which means they can be recycled over and over without degrading. These are preferable to plastic cardboard, which is downcycled. So this is just another way that your habits and decisions have an impact. Next slide, please. The fifth and final R is rot or compost. The first category of materials is yard waste and clean wood. This includes grass clippings, leaves, cut flowers, and untreated wood. The next category is food waste. Your meat, bones, dairy, eggshells, fruit and vegetable peels, even spoiled or rotten food can go into the compost. Next is soiled paper products. This is any kind of paper that has touched food or liquid, like napkins, paper towels, pizza boxes, coffee grounds, and tea leaves. The last category of items accepted in the compost is BPI certified products. These are items that are certified to break down within a certain time frame in a commercial compost facility. So you'll want to look for this logo here that marks whether something is certified compostable or not. Next slide, please. Let's talk about garbage. So this is anything that can't be composted or recycled. This includes plastic film or wrappers or any other kind of plastic that doesn't hold its shape. If sent to the materials recovery facility in the recycling, they can jam the machinery and stop the sorting process. Single-use items like gloves, condiment packets, plastic utensils, and straws are also garbage. The single-use utensils and straws get stuck in the machinery or they're too small to be captured at the materials recovery facility. Styrofoam and black plastic are items that might have a recycling symbol on them, but they aren't acceptable in the recycling program because they're low quality and there's no market for them. On top of that, the black plastic isn't able to be recognized by the optical sorter materials recovery facility. The last category of items is mixed materials. Examples include Tetra Paks, binders, and pens. These items are made of a mix of materials that can't be separated for recycling. One of the more common items, Tetra Paks, are usually found at room temperature in grocery stores. They have a foil lining, paper, and plastic layer, and since they can't be separated from each other, they must be placed in the garbage. There's no sorting once something's sent to the landfill, so it's important to look upstream at our habits to refuse, reduce, reuse, or repair, like Laura mentioned, what we can, and then also recycle and compost when possible to divert these items from the landfill. Next slide. Now that we've gone over the hierarchy, let's discuss some ways that you can talk about waste reduction with your friends and family. It's important to ease them into new habits. For example, starting with composting, you can ease people in with starting just with food scraps. Once they get that down, you can introduce paper. Make it simple for them by focusing on one thing at a time. One way to start for recycling is you can tell them to focus on looking at the number on the bottom of the plastic containers. We accept 1 through 7. So instead of trying to recycle any type of plastic, they can focus on looking for the number 1 through 7 on the bottom of those rigid plastic containers. You want to try your best to lead by example and not antagonize, but encourage and educate instead. You don't want anyone feeling attacked or talked down on. Zero waste isn't just a goal, it's a journey, and we might all be in different places, so it's important to share your knowledge and remember that small steps really do add up. When bringing up waste reduction, you can also appeal to the values of your audience, whether it's caring for the environment, wildlife, or simply being budget friendly. You can provide them the resources they need to succeed, like compost kitchen pails or bio bags if that's what they need. Meet them halfway, especially if they have doubts or uncertainties. You can also make it a game, a friendly competition between your friends to hold each other accountable, or making chores that will create sustainable habits for your kids. Next slide. Now that we know all about the other R's, we wanted to remind you that tomorrow is the first day of Plastic-Free July. So we have a poll here and we'd like to hear how you'll celebrate. And there's also an option on the poll for other. So if you respond with other, please type into the chat how you'll be celebrating. So we'll give you a few minutes to answer this poll.
Okay, I think we got almost everybody to fill out the poll. Everyone, all right. I think I'm gonna close the poll. So here we go. Do you see the results, Michelle?
Yes, so great. It looks like a lot of people are gonna be making a list before shopping for groceries. That's awesome. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. It's inspiring to see everyone's responses. Small changes lead to big ones, so I encourage everyone to start small and don't be so hard on yourself through the process because nobody is perfect and we are all striving to be better to our environment, as long as we're trying. So that concludes our presentation portion of what the other R's are. And we had a review on proper sorting. We went over tips on how to talk about waste reduction. We hope you take everything you learned today, share it with your friends, family, and neighbors because your actions do matter. For future reference, we will create a blog post after the webinar with all of your questions and answers. I see some popping up in the chat already. So stay updated with our social media channels for when that blog will be posted. We'll send out a survey to collect feedback on how we can improve, and also I'll post it in the chat so you can access it easily. And again, we'll be sending out the recording of this whole webinar to all of you. So next slide, please. We'll leave this slide up as an extra resource for you all. Yep, that one, with the links to our websites, blogs about zero waste, where you can get more ideas on how to reduce your waste. There's a couple of websites about repairing, including the link to find out more information about a virtual Fix-It clinic led by Peter, a link to a store in San Mateo called Reach and Teach. They have an awesome program where they allow you to bring your own container and refill on hand soap, dishwashing liquid, laundry detergent, and more. So check them out. And also the owners are really nice, so shout out to them. And lastly, we have resources to online community sharing, freecycle.org, or even the Nextdoor app. These are places you can give and get free stuff from people within your neighborhood and local community. So we'll move on to the Q&A portion of this webinar. So if you haven't already, please submit your questions via the chat function. And if you're calling in through your phone, you can email your questions to us at rethinker@rethinkwaste.org. So I'm going to invite Julia and Heather to help in answering questions, and Juan will be taking the lead on this portion.
All right, thank you, Joanna. We've got a lot of good questions coming in, so let's go ahead and get started. First question we got is, should we put shredded paper in paper bags or are plastic bags are okay? I'm gonna give this question to Heather.
Excellent, thank you. That's a great question. And we do ask that shredded bags be put in a paper bag, stapled shut, and then written shredded paper so our drivers do know what's in that bag. This keeps from confetti going out on the 101, so we do appreciate that. And we want to make sure that we keep all plastic film, anything crinkleable in these hands, you want to keep that out of the recycling.
Great answer. Thank you, Heather. All right, next question. So what happens to the compost collected? How much is collected in the county, and is the volume trending up for our county? I'll give this one to Joanna.
Good question. So compost, it gets collected and it goes it comes to the Shoreway Environmental Center first, where we fill trucks, South Bay recycling trucks, to bring them to two different composting facilities, one called Newbie Island in San Jose, and the other one is called Blossom Valley Organics in Vernalis. So the compost volume in our service area, which is again from Burlingame to East Palo Alto, is trending up. There was a 1.7 increase in overall compost collection from 2018 to 2019, and residential, business, and apartments all saw an increase in the amount of compost. But I would say for the most part, compost is trending up, thankfully.
All right, thank you, Joanna. Now we have a question about the buyback center. So wondering about when will the buyback center be available again, and are there any other alternative viable sites to take in bottles for buyback in our service area? And I'll give this question to Julia.
Thanks, Juan. That is a good question. So currently there's only one buyback. So this is for those unfamiliar, buyback is the California Redemption Program for qualifying bottles and cans. You know, when you buy bottle and can, you have to pay cents, like a deposit. So right now there's only one buyback location in our service area. It's J&D Recycling in San Mateo. There are two other buyback locations in San Mateo County. One is currently open, Zark in South San Francisco, and then the South San Francisco Scavenger Company's buyback will reopen tomorrow, actually, due to shelter in place. Some of these places were closed. And just to give a background for those curious, because I know this is a common question we get through phone and email, is that our Shoreway Public Recycling Center was a buyback location for many years, but last year after Replanet closed all their locations, we saw a large increase in traffic to our center, which resulted in long vehicle traffic lines and in the public traffic lanes on Shoreway Road, which caused unsafe traffic conditions, long wait times for Recology trucks, our trucks, South Bay recycling trucks, to drop off and move off site your recycling, compost, and garbage, and long wait lines for public access to our facility, and also unsafe vehicle access to our neighbors, such as to our neighbors on Shoreway Road. So we had to close our facility. We haven't been able to find a safe way to reopen, so we haven't opened it back up. And just so you know, our site, Recology, RethinkWaste, we're not required by state law to have a buyback. We just had it for a very long time. So until we can figure this out, until Cal Recycle, the state department that's in charge of overseeing this, can figure it out, we'd love to be a buyback center again, but right now it's not safe to do that. So.
Great explanation, Julia. Thank you for that. So next question is, so what is the smallest size of a ball of tin foil that would be accepted, and what about metal bottle caps? are they too small? I will give that question to Heather.
Yeah. So I think a good example to answer this is just thinking about a burrito. So many of us love getting burritos, right? And when you get that burrito, it's probably about this big, but maybe you accidentally rip the top part of the aluminum off, right? And that's a tiny piece. Just hold it till the end. At the very end, shake off all the food from that aluminum foil and then put all those little pieces into your bigger piece and then ball it up. And I would say that is a good size, right? And so if you ever get ones that are a little bit smaller, one thing I do is I just collect them in a little tin, and at the end I like ball them all up, right? Like keep the little pieces at the very end, just ball it up. But that gives you a good size. A burrito foil, if you ball that up, that's a good size estimate. And just be sure, you know, it doesn't have to be perfectly clean. That balling up will really protect, the reason we want clean materials to protect those paper products. So as long as that hot sauce isn't getting on our paper, you're in the clear.
Okay, that's a great clarification. Thank you, Heather. So now we have a question about whether all our items are getting recycled that goes into the blue bin. So that's kind of a new topic that probably a lot of you have heard about. So question is, are the items that we place in our blue recycling bins really getting recycled? And then a follow-up question from the same person is, are the cardboard milk cartons actually recyclable? I'll give this question to Joanna.
Yeah, so I guess the answer is yes and no, because we do take back plastics 1 through 7, although plastics numbers 3 and 7 are currently not being recycled as there's no market for that recycling item. And these are items like to-go containers, yogurt cups. When you look on the bottom of a container and you see a little number within the chasing arrows, that's what we're talking about when we say plastics 3 through 7. And other than being contractually bound to collect 3 through 7 plastics, a market could come back. So we do still collect them. And the best steps would be to really focus on reducing waste. Cleaning the best that you can, making sure all liquids are out of the container and all food, and supporting policies that reduce the amount of non-recyclable plastics available to consumers in the first place. Your second question was about milk cartons. So cardboard milk cartons from the refrigerated section at the grocery store go into your recycling cart. But if they are shelf stable, so like soy milk that you find on the shelf at the grocery store that's not in the refrigerated section, those are called aseptic containers, which means they are made of different materials. So sometimes it's lined with foil on the inside, and then there's cardboard, and then there's plastic. So they're made of mixed materials. So those go in the garbage because we don't have the machinery at our facility to take those apart. So the answer to the milk carton question is it depends where you get the milk from and what kind of container it's in.
Thank you, Joanna. All right, another good question is, what can we do with Amazon bubble wrap envelopes? Also, what is the best way to get rid of styrofoam? Laura, would you like to answer this one?
Sure, I'll give it a try. So with any packaging that you receive in the mail, one great thing to try and check into is if the UPS store or like the post office will take it back. A lot of the times they'll take back those like air pillows and the like bubble wrap, and they'll probably take back the envelopes too, as long as they're not like all torn up. Otherwise, it is that mixed material, that paper on plastic. So we can't recycle that. So that would go into the garbage, but you can always reuse it, right? So you could, if you have to send a package to someone else, you know, shove that in there and tape it up again, and you can reuse it again. So there's no reason to not reuse it or check with a post office. Was there another part to that question?
About styrofoam.
Oh, styrofoam. So to my knowledge, there isn't really any recycling program for styrofoam. So it belongs in the black garbage bin. Does Julia or Heather want to add anything to that?
Just that, trying to find companies that do push back on styrofoam, or if you receive styrofoam, it'd be nice to write to that company. Say, I am a purchaser of your goods and I would like to see this in more sustainable packaging. And I think a lot of us would be surprised with how much people and businesses do respond as you continue to give your feedback.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Laura and Heather. Another good question is, do the plastic net bags from Costco or items such as onions or potatoes go to the recyclable plastics collections bin? And I know there's these bags at a lot of different grocery stores. Does Michelle or Heather want to answer this one?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take that one. These are unfortunately not recyclable. Like I mentioned, it is flimsy plastic. So any kind of plastic that you can crinkle or doesn't hold its shape is unfortunately not recyclable. Plastics are downcycled, and that's reached its end life in the plastics. And so those do need to be put into the garbage if you're getting rid of them, or a creative reuse that I like to do that's pretty fun, especially if you have kids, is it's a great way to talk about nets in the ocean and different things, that how this actually does affect the wildlife in our oceans. And so it's a really good tangible practice material that you can reuse. And so giving it that one more life and then sending it off to the landfill.
That is a great suggestion to connect it to other topics. We definitely don't want that ending up in the ocean. Another question we got, let's see. Can old light bulbs be put in the orange battery bin? How about spiral bound notebooks? Are those recyclable? I'll give this one to Joanna.
Yeah, so for the light bulbs, they do not go into the battery bucket. I believe that was the question. If they can go there, they would have to go somewhere separately. So if they are incandescent, so if they just kind of look like the IDEA bulb, then that can go in the garbage. But if they are LED or fluorescent, those do have mercury in them, so they have to get disposed of at the household hazardous waste facility in San Mateo, or places like hardware stores. I know that some hardware stores do take them back so that people can bring them in and get them disposed of safely. And then the second question was about spiral notebooks. So yes, we do take notebooks in the recycling. I know that there are some questions about like smaller pieces like bottle caps or the metal that's attached to the notebook. For us, we think it would definitely be a lot to ask everyone to separate those materials. So we still do take back, even if they're still connected to a metal spiral, then it's okay to put it in the recycling.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
While you're looking at that question, I'll just jump in because I did notice that I wanted to respond to the bottle caps as well. And so the bottle caps, we asked that you put them back on the jar or the bottle that it is. And so that actually gives it a chance to be recycled because it is very small and it can slip through the lines. So it's important to be able to shut those bottles and then put them back into your recycling.
Thank you, Heather. That is important. How about rubber bands? Are rubber bands recyclable? I'll give that one to Laura. Do you want to answer that one?
We don't take rubber bands in our recycling system. It might be something that you could look up. You can see one of our links is hard to recycle. Oh, maybe it's not on there anymore. Never mind. Basically what I would do with your rubber bands is reuse them. I get tons of rubber bands on like herbs, or if you go and buy flowers, you always get rubber bands on those, but rubber bands are something that can be reused super easily. So build yourself a little rubber band ball, give it to a child for their birthday, you know. Lots of reuse options with those rubber bands, but no, they aren't recyclable, unfortunately.
All right. So how about, what are the best places to give away unwanted but still usable items? How about Joanna?
Yeah, for me, I always check with my friends and my family first. Usually, like I mentioned earlier, we have that trade agreement with Black Plastic. We always use that. And before, I know that at one point I had a lot of it. So, you know, I would ask my parents like, oh, do you need this? Is this something that you need? I shoot that question out to my friends all the time. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And if not, then there's also freecycle.org, which is listed on the additional resources page that we're all looking at right now. There's Nextdoor. I know one of my colleagues just recently was able to get a free fermentation jar through Nextdoor. Like yesterday, she was talking about it. So you can really look within your community and see where things are needed, or where what people are giving away. I would highly recommend looking in your own community first and your own circles. And then if that doesn't work, then, oh, and someone just mentioned their Facebook group. So that's great. That's another resource. And then if that doesn't work, there's also local donation centers as well. But I would first check my own inner circles and then kind of go out from that.
Great, that's a great suggestion, Joanna. Thank you. New question we just got. What is the best option for disposing of e-waste? I'll give this one to Julia.
Good question. Right now, a lot of the e-waste locations are actually not available due to the shelter-in-place orders. Usually I take my e-waste to Goodwill. You can also normally bring your e-waste to our public recycling center in San Carlos, which is also closed. We hope to open back up later this summer. Right now it's just not safe for our staff to be 6 feet apart, so we just can't open back up right now. If your e-waste, or I mean, if your electronic item is still usable, I definitely also, like I know Heather and Joanna have mentioned, like check with your friends or someone who might want it. Some might be really old, like I just found an old like CD player, like I can't even find the headphones for it. So, you know, just keep your e-waste right now and hold on to it. Definitely don't throw it in the trash or recycling or compost. And then wait for us to tell you, or the county or whoever, to hopefully let you guys know when these places open back up so you can take your e-waste somewhere safe. And there might be events and locations hopefully soon so that you guys can take them somewhere. But right now, a lot of them are not available. So hold on to them just hopefully for another couple of weeks so that places will open up hopefully in the next month or so.
Thank you, Julia. Another question is, where does wood go? I'll give this question to Heather.
Can you repeat it one more time, Juan?
Where does wood go, and what bin would that go, or what can we do with that?
Excellent. So untreated, clean wood can go into your compost if it's broken down, and making sure that the lids can all still shut. That is an acceptable material. If the wood is already treated, we do want that to go into the garbage. The compost is going to go back to California soil, and we want to keep that clean and pure because we're putting it on our food. So clean, untreated wood, safe to put in your compost. Treated wood, put it in your garbage.
Excellent, thank you. And then a question I'll ask all our panelists is, where do you start the waste reduction process? What is like one good step that you would take as a first step to help reduce your amount of waste?
I'll start off with that one. So I think it's really interesting to do a home waste audit, because really everyone's waste is different, and we can give you tips that we use in our own lives, but if you are using different items than us, they're not super helpful. So really it's good to see what you're throwing away. So maybe for one day or for 1 week, you look through your garbage every now and then and you see what's in there. And then you can start thinking about other options, whether you could get things in recyclable containers or if you could buy it in bulk and not have the container at all. So that's where I would start personally.
Thank you for that suggestion, Laura.
I have.
Joanna, do you want to give me? Oh yeah, great.
Yeah, so for me, we mentioned earlier, starting small, I feel like would really, I feel like you get more momentum from that. So really just making one change. So when I first, I guess, started on my zero waste journey, I first eliminated straws. And from there, I realized it's actually really easy to eliminate straws from my life. So then I moved on to utensils, and then it went to produce bags, and it just kind of kept going. So I feel like just making these small steps were really helpful for me, because I know that it can get overwhelming to see a lot of plastic and a lot of just a lot of those problems and not knowing what to do. So I feel like remembering that I can control the things that only I can do. I feel like just having that mindset and working just step by step in increments, again, that leads to a large goal. So that's what helped for me.
Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah, I think for me, similarly, it's picking like low-hanging fruit is really helpful because it is a lot of action. We have a lot of plastic. Plastic is really a big part of our current culture. And so being able to choose which one in your own power and control, like Joanna was saying, that you can switch and see maybe the most effect. So for me, that was having those pesky little plastic bags, right, for the produce, and really just being able to eliminate that. Because let's say you like picking about 7 or 8 different vegetables, that's already 8 different bags every week, and you just see how that multiplies every time. And a good example is bouncing off Laura as well, is even just keeping that, just keep however many plastic bags you use for 1 month and just see what a large amount that is. And sometimes that has been really helpful for me to be able to cut that whole part out, and then it feels like a big step. Even though it was a pretty small seeming one, it felt like the result was much larger.
I agree with everyone. It's simpler when you just start with one thing small, and when you gain momentum, pretty soon, who knows, maybe you'll be mobilizing with a group of people to write letters to companies who are using styrofoam packaging. So, small steps can really create big change, especially when everyone's encouraging each other.
Thank you. Yeah. Another question. is, how about those small plastic sauce containers? Could those be recycled, or would those be too small to get recycled? I'll give this one to Joanna.
Yeah, so you should look at look at that number to see if that container has a number on it. I know some of those sauce containers, oh, I actually see one right now on the table. They sometimes have numbers, they sometimes don't, or sometimes one side has numbers and the like the cover does or the top doesn't. So I would encourage everyone to look to see if that number is there. And if it's not, which sometimes it's just unmarked plastic, then that goes into the garbage.
Thank you. Thank you. Then another question is, are receipts recyclable? Heather, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so oftentimes those receipts have a carbon printing, and so they're unfortunately not recyclable. One good way to tell if it's paper from the olden days, if you had one of those calculator type ones that printed out with blue ink, those are straight paper. But if it has carbon from today, those ones we want in the garbage.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a tricky one that not too many people know about. How about wax cardboard? Do we accept wax cardboard? Joanna, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so waxed cardboard, as long as it's not food soil, then it could go into the recycling.
And I just want to bounce in here and talk about for restaurants. If you have waxy cardboard boxes, we actually do prefer those ones going into the compost. So the waxy cardboard of the milk carton is great for recyclable still. That's that refrigerated section that Joanna was iterating earlier. But if you are a restaurant or a business that's getting, oftentimes lettuce comes in these big waxy boxes, we'd actually prefer those ones in the compost.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Another popular question is, are tissues compostable? Laura, do you want to answer this one?
Sure, I'll take this one. So tissues are not compostable, and that's because, like Heather said earlier, all of our compost actually goes straight to farmers and it's used to grow food. So, I mean, do you really want nasty snot on your food? Probably not, right? So we don't take any human waste into the compost bin. So any tissues have to go into the black garbage bin. Good question.
Thank you. Very, very good way of explaining it, Laura. Thank you. And another question we got is thin plastic recyclable? And I'll give this one to Joanna.
Thin plastic, if you're talking about flimsy plastic, things like zip top bags, saran wrap, if that's what you're talking about, then those would go into the garbage. If they end up in the recycling, they end up jamming our machines at our facility. So we definitely don't want those flimsy type of plastics in the recycling. They would go in the garbage.
Thank you. And then, are there any items that you see commonly recycled or composted that shouldn't be, besides what we have already discussed? I'll give this one first to Heather, but then I'll give Laura and Joanna also a chance to answer if they have anything in mind.
Yeah, so one that I do see happen is in the compost, dog poop, especially in compostable bags. And so for the same reason Laura talked about, we really don't want any kind of feces going into the compost. I still think it's great you use the compostable bag. It's better than plastic, woohoo, but we don't want that in our food source. So keeping those out of the compost is important. The other thing that we've reiterated frequently, but is the wish cycling of flimsy plastic. And we're saying it so much because it is such a issue causer in our facilities. And so we just really want to remind you that we don't want that flimsy plastic. And if you are living in a multifamily dwelling within our service area, we provide free buddy bags, which help you to collect all your plastic loose and reuse that bag over and over. It also conveniently shows you acceptable materials. So that would be a great free resource you can access to keep those flimsy plastics out.
Thank you, Heather. That's a good resource to keep in mind for those of us living in apartments. Do any of the other panelists have any off the top of their head they can think of?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of people are not sure, or maybe they mistake PPE. So like masks, gloves, all of the safety gear that we're all using right now. Sometimes people might think that they go into the recycling, and sometimes it's even worse. Sometimes we see it out in the street littered, but they actually go into the garbage. So that's something to remember. And then also, I think someone mentioned or asked about paper towels that you wipe with your, wipe your wet hands with. I think a misconception sometimes, people think that since it's paper, it would go into the recycling, but that could actually go into the compost. So that would count as food or soiled paper. So that's safe to go into the compost.
Nice.
I'll just jump in real quickly and mention that something that's commonly goes into the compost, probably by mistake, is the stickers on your fruits and vegetables. So you want to make sure that you take those off before you compost your fruits and vegetable peels.
Thank you. Okay, so we're right at the hour mark for the webinar. So thank you for all the questions we've gotten. We don't want to hold you guys up too much, but we'll be sending out an email with a survey and all the links from the resource page. And next week we will send out the link to a blog that will have all the questions that were asked with the answers, as well as the recording of the webinar. And I just want to say again, thank you to everyone for showing interest in this really important topic. I know it can sometimes be overwhelming to think about waste reduction, but fortunately, because the topic relates to so many of our activities, it also means that there's a lot of different opportunities to address the issue. And if we take things step by step, then we can definitely make a really great impact. So I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week and a great 4th of July weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.